Prince gave the Bangles their biggest hit in secret in 1986. He gave Susanna Hoffs more than that, though. Something was going on between them behind the scenes. In addition to chart success, the band experienced jealousy as a result of the fairy tale relationship. Then, in 1993, she married a well-known filmmaker. Hollywood tried to conceal her affiliations with musicians and actresses. There were secrets and scandals in every romance. What actually took place with Prince? And how did one of the biggest bands of the 1980s get unintentionally destroyed by her love life? The birth date of Susanna Hoffs is January 17, 1959. In Los Angeles. Family was not like most. Joshua Allen Hoffs, her father, was a well-known psychotherapist who served some of the biggest names in Hollywood. In the 1950s, Tamar Ruth Simon, her mother, was one of the few female directors working in the business. At the time, their Pacific Palisades home cost $180,000, or about $1.8 million in today's currency. Original artwork, movie artifacts, and incessant chatter were all present. Growing up, Susanna was surrounded by her brothers, John and Jesse. Her mother adored the Beatles in a Jewish home where thoughts came as naturally as cereal for breakfast. It was more akin to a way of life than merely admiration. Their house essentially became a Beatles shrine after I Want to Hold Your Hand became the hit song on American radio in 1964. Tamar spent almost $2,000 a year, or roughly $18,000 in today's currency, and owned every single and album, including the Uncommon bootlegs. She put on Sgt. Pepper's while preparing dinner and played Abbey Road every morning while preparing breakfast. Was present everywhere and wasn't just background music. Susanna was able to harmonize with any Beatles song by the time she was 6 years old. The vocal layers that would later help characterize the Bangles were something she was learning without even realizing it. Susanna started taking guitar lessons from her uncle Robert Simon, a session guitarist who had played with Sonny and Cher, when she was 7 years old. He gifted her a Little Martin acoustic guitar in 1966 for $85, which is equivalent to almost $750 in today's currency. They practiced in the family every Saturday. It had been transformed into a little studio. In under 2 years, she composed her first song, Sunshine in My Room, and learned 47 chord progressions. In a leather notebook that is still in existence today, her uncle documented every step of her development. She was already experimenting with complex jazz chords by the time she was 9. Her early experience equipped her with the talents necessary to eventually make a name for herself in the male-dominated rock industry, not just as a singer but also as a lead and rhythm-capable guitarist. Her theatrical presence was greatly influenced by dance in addition to music. She received training at Santa Monica's Westside Ballet Academy from the ages of 5 to 12. Her monthly tuition is $40, or around $360 in today's currency. Madame Violette Armand, her teacher, was a former member of the Paris Opera Ballet's dancing company. Susanna gained confidence in her ability to retain her body, move gracefully, and hold the attention of the audience through ballet. She played a snowflake during a 1971 performance of The Nutcracker as part of 3 recitals. She was able to separate herself from the more chaotic energy of other rock artists in the 1980s by developing a refined presence through training. Susanna received her art degree from the University of California, Berkeley in 1980. But after switching between multiple majors, she made that ultimate choice. Before deciding on painting, she experimented with dance, theater, film, and sculpture. It wasn't that she was unable to decide. She was deeply curious about all forms of creativity, which is why she sculpted and painted during the day, but at night something else was emerging. Together with her lover David Roback, she had begun writing music, and their band, originally known as the Psychiatrists and later as the Unconscious, was growing beyond a side project. Her instructors assumed she would visit museums or galleries. However, she was already daydreaming of being a professional musician. Everything changed for her after 2 shows. The first was the Sex Pistols' last performance on January 14, 1978, in San Francisco's Winterland Ballroom. Before leaving the stage, Johnny Rotten famously asked the audience if they felt deceived. The second was a concert by Patti Smith, who profoundly affected Susanna with her blend of poetry and song. She subsequently claimed to have experienced the full impact of the art and punk movements at this time. It was a pivotal moment. She understood that she could produce something unpolished and authentic with only 3 or 4 chords. She recalled thinking, "I can do that," while listening to the Ramones. It helped her see herself as a part of something greater and gave her the confidence to switch from acoustic to electric guitar. Susanna astonished everyone by leaving visual art entirely after graduating. Her family had anticipated that she would pursue a career in the arts, possibly in movies like her mother. Rather, she returned to Los Angeles and began searching for musicians to join a band. It was a dangerous step. It was difficult for women to get into rock music in 1980. There were very few female guitarists on stage, and most bands were composed of men. That didn't deter her, though. She leaned on her uncle's guitar lessons and her conviction that she could forge her own route. Susanna Hoffs had just received her art degree from UC Berkeley in 1981 when she noticed a little advertisement in a newspaper in Los Angeles. Vicki and Debbie Peterson, 2 sisters searching for performers who shared their passion of bands, put it. She did. Something snapped when they began singing together after meeting in a Northridge garage. It only required that initial harmony. Despite their lack of a strategy, they clicked. A band was formed in an instant. The Supersonic Bangs was their name. The Bangs followed. They eventually changed their name to the Bangles. Rock music was still dominated by men at the time. It seemed impossible for 4 people to survive in a garage. However, they continued to practice. They continued to play clubs. They continued to pursue it. Their debut album was released in 1984. It was praised by critics. However, it didn't sell. Only slightly more than 49,000 copies were sold globally, and it peaked at number 80 on the charts. They received acclaim but no airtime. They went unnoticed by MTV. No radio station picked them up. No money was involved. Day jobs were required. Columbia Records was their record label. However, it didn't feel like a victory. They had no money. They performed at little clubs at night and went about their regular business throughout the day. The label began to worry, groceries needed to be purchased, and rent needed to be paid. After signing an all-female rock band, several executives started to question whether they had made a mistake. Pressure grew from that concern, and Susanna Hoffs was gradually pushed to the front by the label. The industry believed that a single face sold better than a bunch, not because she aspired to be the star. Nevertheless, the Bangles' singing style was what set them apart. Their harmonies were not well thought out. Each member took turns singing lead, which gave their songs a layered, deep sound. They happened to uncover them by chance during one of their early garage sessions. Hoffs was a former experimental musician. Folk and classic rock were introduced by the Peterson sisters. Their trademark was Vicki Peterson's jangly guitar. Together, they produced what critics subsequently referred to as neo-psychedelia. But in the 1980s, being unique wasn't enough. Every female band was viewed as a gimmick. Instead of appreciating their talent, executives and media frequently sexualized them. The Go-Go's were featured in their underwear on the Rolling Stone cover. The caption described the type of workplace that the Bangles were required to labor in. Columbia Records started to change the band's reputation. They shoved Hoffs forward. The democratic style of the group was gradually abandoned. Then something happened that nobody could have foreseen. Prince wrote a song titled Manic Monday in 1984. He chose not to release it, although he did record it as a duet for another group. He gave it to the Bangles in secret 2 years later. To conceal his identity, he adopted the fictitious name Christopher. It wasn't random, though. He was intrigued by Hoffs and had listened to their debut album. He attended one of their performances. It felt like a fairy tale, Hoffs subsequently remarked. Glass slippers were not brought by Prince. He had a popular song. Everything changed with just one song. After its 1986 release, Manic Monday peaked at number 2 in the US and the UK. It paved the way for Different Light, their second album. In the US alone, that album sold 3 million copies. In both Canada and the UK, it achieved platinum status. The album has 5 singles that reached the top of the charts. They were no longer fighting to be heard, for the first time. They were everywhere. Walk Like an Egyptian was the album's most popular track. In the US, Denmark, and the Netherlands, it peaked at number 1. It became the number 1 single of 1987 and remained at the top of the Billboard chart for 4 weeks. At the MTV Awards, the video received a nomination for Best Group Video. The Bangles had evolved beyond a garage band. They were pop stars all over the world. Their influence was completely acknowledged by the music industry by 1988. A Susanna Hoffs trademark guitar was released by Rickenbacker that year. There were just 250 produced, making it a limited edition. It was revealed at a big Atlanta music event. It featured a special design that Hoffs personally selected, and it cost more than $1,000. The guitar rose to prominence as one of the decade's most sought-after instruments. It demonstrated that her impact extended beyond her voice and appearance. It also affected how individuals understood and played rock tunes. Being the focus of attention was never Susanna Hoffs' intention. Everyone in the Bangles was supposed to share the limelight. Michael Steele, Vicki Peterson, Debbie Peterson, and Susanna all performed instruments, composed songs, and sang. That's the way it is in the beginning. However, things began to change as soon as cameras were there. Photographers positioned Susanna in the front since she was shorter than the others. At first, it appeared innocuous, but eventually, it elevated her to the position of leader. Without anyone speaking up, the band's reputation quickly shifted as the media and fans took note. Despite the fact that she never requested it, Susanna became the face that people remembered, gradually weakening the connection they had formed. The statistics painted a graphic picture. Susanna sang lead on 5 of the 7 major singles that Columbia Records issued. She became much more identifiable on Egyptian video, particularly due to her well-known eye movement. She immediately struck a chord with audiences. Some radio DJs were referring to the tunes as hers alone by 1988. Unaware of how much the others contributed to the song, they mistakenly believed she was the singer. Susanna had no intention of doing this, but the distance between her and the other members of the band continued to widen with every song. The music weren't the only thing. The only person on magazine covers was Susanna. Teen Outlaw, Rolling Stone, and Spin all promoted her as the star. If her bandmates showed up at all, they were either pushed to the sidelines or excluded entirely. Reporters shifted their attention to Susanna's personal life and ceased inquiring about the group. The same routine applied to TV appearances and press tours. Her visage was captured on camera, and she was the sole subject of interviews. The media disregarded her attempts to bring up the other members of the band. It was made worse by the fact that her attempt to incorporate them only served to enhance her charm. The remaining Bangles were forced to watch their equal roles. Change becomes something else in the world's perspective. Behind the scenes, everything were collapsing by 1988. Previously a cohesive and equal team, it now felt like a divided workplace. Vicki frequently addressed the audience and assisted in directing the performances during concerts, but Susanna was always in the spotlight. The other participants felt unnoticed. Debbie eventually acknowledged that she simply grew accustomed to the stress. Nobody knew how to discuss the situation. They were unable to get together and discuss the situation collectively, Susanna subsequently stated. The harm continued to accumulate until record executives started recommending that she go it alone. They showed no concern for one another. What little remained was broken by that last thrust. The band broke up in 1989. It appeared to be a success from the outside. It had fallen silently inside. Next came the film. Theaters began showing The All-Nighter on May 1, 1987. Susanna's mother, Tamar Simon Hoffs, wrote and directed the comedy with a beach theme. Susanna co-starred with Pam Grier, Dee Dee Pfeiffer, and Joan Cusack. At about $1 million, the budget was modest. With only $2.7 million made worldwide, the film did not fare well. However, the harm had been completed. There had been no involvement from the rest of the band. As they were being left behind, Susanna was being portrayed as an actress and single artist. Even though Bangles' song wasn't included in the movie, it didn't matter. She had already established herself as a solo star. She received greater attention from magazines and talk shows. Insiders and fans perceived her as distinct from the group. Susanna had grown into something far more than the Bangles, whether she liked it or not. The Bangles performed at the Avalon in Hollywood on October 30, 1986. Susanna Hoffs met songwriter Tom Kelly backstage. She developed a new writing style as a result of the encounter. Kelly and his collaborator Billy Steinberg began with lyrics, although she had traditionally begun with tunes. They used two actual photos to write Eternal Flame. One was the Graceland grave of Elvis Presley, where the light had extinguished during a rainy visit. The other was a red light in the Palm Springs synagogue where Steinberg grew up. It was never intended for that light to go out. The Bangles' second #1 hit, the song was released on January 23, 1989. Earned platinum and reached the top of 8 other nations' charts. Prior to them, only two female bands, the Supremes and the Shirelles, had numerous #1 hits. The previous song, In Your Room, had demonstrated Susanna's versatility. Everything broke apart when they were released in August, right before they peaked. The band was summoned to their manager's home in 1989. They believed they were talking about an Australian trip. Rather, they entered a room occupied by their management and attorney. It was a straightforward message. Was finished. Later, Vicki Peterson acknowledged that she had noticed the warning signs but had decided to disregard them. Many thought that management, who viewed Hoffs as a potential solo star, was the driving force behind this separation. To prevent the band from continuing without Hoffs, they even extended an offer to Michael Steele for a solo contract. The group was already worn out by that point. They had spent years traveling. Since the Different Light album, tensions have been increasing. Their greatest hits were frequently written by others, despite their desire to be recognized as legitimate musicians. Their differences were further exacerbated by the public's perception of Hoffs as the leader. The moment. Nothing could have been worse. 6 months after Eternal Flame reached the top of the global charts, the band disbanded in the fall of 1989. The success of Hoffs' solo career wasn't what everyone had anticipated. The solo agreement with Michael Steele never materialized. The Peterson sisters left music entirely, at least temporarily, since they were so frightened. Debbie formed a band called Kindred Spirit, and Vicki joined the Continental Drifters. The split didn't make sense to fans or industry insiders. Hoffs' debut solo album, Real Impact, was published in 1991. Hoffs had changed her sound by 1996. Her self-titled second album had a stronger folk influence. Columbia dropped her because she didn't like the change. Instead, it was picked up by London Records. All I Want, the single, peaked at number 77 and remained there for 12 weeks. However, it was insufficient to keep the project afloat. The record had a lot of darker topics and was quite personal. The assassination of John Lennon inspired the song Weak with Love. It was well received by critics but did not sell well. Columbia had previously rejected a few of her tunes, demonstrating their lack of confidence in her guidance. Simultaneously, an unexpected event occurred. Hoffs joined Ming T, a phony band from the 1960s. Matthew Sweet and Mike Myers were among them. Austin Powers was played by Myers. Hoffs played Gillian Shagwell, while Sweet played Sid Belvedere. In all 3 Austin Powers films, what started out as a joke in nightclubs in Los Angeles evolved into full performances. Songs like Daddy Wasn't There and BBC were recorded. The name of the group was inspired by an odd Italian movie starring Ursula Andress from the 1960s. Myers was developing the Austin Powers character at the same time that Hoffs' solo career had plateaued. Her serious albums were not as successful as this ridiculous imaginary band. The man who would direct the Austin Powers movie, Jay Roach, was married to Hoffs in 1993. The event took place in Los Angeles. Officiating were her grandfather and uncle, both of whom are rabbis. "My princess, you have now brought me a prince," her grandfather said. Raised as a Southern Baptist, Roach became a Jew before the wedding. In 1995 and 1998, they welcomed 2 kids into the world. Later, Roach directed serious political movies like Game Change and Recount, as well as Meet the Parents. Hoffs claimed in 2023 that it took a number of previous relationships, including ones with Prince and actor Donovan Leitch, to determine that Jay was the right man. After the Bangles, cooperation was the source of her greatest musical success. She and Matthew Sweet published Under the Covers, volume in 2006. They recorded 15 songs from the 1960s under the moniker Sid and Susie. They both had a passion for vintage songs. Volume 2 had 16 songs from the 1970s and was released in 2009, including songs by Fleetwood Mac, Rod Stewart, and Carly Simon. The third volume, published in 2013, concentrated on musicians from the 1980s, such as the Smiths and the Pretenders. They featured 57 musicians on the 3 albums, ranging from Prince to the Beatles. Later, a 4-CD box set called Completely Under the Covers was released. It became her most acclaimed album since The Bangles and featured bonus songs. The Bangles accomplished something unexpected in 1999. They reunited 10 years after they had stopped communicating. It wasn't for nostalgia or love, though. In exchange for their reunion for a Behind the Music special, VH1 gave them $2 million. Susanna Hoffs' solo work had been earning her a meager $50,000 annually. Everything changed because of that money. On March 15, 1999, they first met at Van Nuys Sound City Studios. They didn't speak to one another for the first 3 hours. They solely communicated via their manager. They all remained in different recording booths. There was actual tension. After that, they began to play Manic Monday. The quiet was broken at that moment. Hoffs broke down in tears. Something changed. With 4.2 million viewers, the show became the highest-rated episode on VH1 that year. A new record resulted from their reunion. It was released on March 15, 2003, and was titled Doll Revolution. Cost them $500,000. Future royalties were used as collateral for the loan. At first, things appeared to be horrible. In the first week, only 12,000 copies were sold. The album felt contrived and dated, according to critics. Then, however, an odd event occurred. Something That You Said was one song that gradually gained popularity on adult contemporary radio. On the charts, it peaked at number 27. They avoided financial ruin because of just one song. In 2004, Hoffs acknowledged that she had been searching for a legitimate employment before the paychecks began to arrive. In the end, 180,000 copies of the album were sold globally. Although it didn't make them famous again, it demonstrated that they were still valuable. Fans of the song adored it. The greatest amount. As a panel for sound. They recorded the title track at precisely 2:47 a.m. on November 3, 2010, following some wine and late-night improvisation. Their most acclaimed tune in 20 years was born out of that unpolished moment. In its first month of release, 45,000 copies of the record were sold. It only cost $18,000 to manufacture, but it was 3 times more than their label had anticipated. GarageBand was utilized on Hoffs' MacBook Pro. The entire recording procedure was later turned into the documentary Sweetheart Sessions. Susanna Hoffs prioritized raising her 2 sons over her career in music. Sam was born in 1997, and Jackson in 1994. She invested more than $3 million in their schooling. Both boys attended Stanford. Jackson took a while to enter. Before transferring in 2014, he was turned down twice. The annual expense of his tuition alone was $47,000. To help pay for it, Hoffs sold her Malibu beach house for $2.1 million. Sam was accepted with a full scholarship to study computer science. Jackson currently makes $35,000 annually as a music producer in Nashville. Sam went in a different direction. He started his own tech company and amassed $2.8 million by the age of 25. Hoffs once claimed that in order to ensure she didn't miss their Little League games, she would practice her guitar in her car. Although both sons are proficient musicians, only one pursued a career in music. Sam used to joke that his mother had cured him of his desire to pursue a career in music. Unexpectedly, Hoffs had one of his most significant turning points. She unintentionally rear-ended Andrew Brassel at a Beverly Hills junction in July 2011 while she was traveling to a Bangles practice. They began discussing music rather than merely sharing insurance information. Brassel was a lyricist from Nashville. There on his phone, he played a demo for her. She flew to Nashville to work with him 3 months later. Someday, a complete solo album was born out of that accident. It took 18 months to complete, but the cost was merely $75,000. Only during school hours would Hoffs record. Because he thought the tracks were good, producer Mitchell Fromm agreed to work for $500 a day. The album received the best praise of her career when it was ultimately released. It was dubbed her masterpiece by Rolling Stone. Only 23,000 copies were sold, but it brought approximately $400,000 from TV and movie license arrangements. Susanna Hoffs shocked everyone once more at the age of 64. She published her debut book in April 2023. This Bird Has Flown was the title. Little Brown and Company published it. It was praised by critics. It was described as a stunner by the New York Times. According to NPR, it was a love letter to music and was charming and heartfelt. The originality of it was recognized by the Los Angeles Times. For years, as she worked on her book, Hoffs had kept it a secret. The narrative focused on 33-year-old broke musician Jane Stark, who lived with her parents after having just one hit 10 years prior. According to readers, it was truthful and packed with information about the actual music. Business. Universal Pictures purchased the film before the book was even available for purchase. Rarely does this occur, particularly for first-time writers. Anatomy of a Scandal producers Bruna Papandrea and Liza Chasin joined the project. Hoffs would write the screenplay herself, which was even more unexpected. That job usually goes to someone else. She described the entire event as a dream come true. Hollywood clearly recognized something unique in her story because the movie contract was signed so quickly. There was more to the book than just a romance. On a trip to London, Jane, the protagonist, encounters Tom Hardy, a professor of British literature, not the actor. She rediscovers herself and her music as a result of their friendship. The narrative also demonstrates the potential dangers of the music industry. Jonesy, a figure who assisted Jane with her first hit, now wishes to manage her resurgence. The novel examines whether Jane will pursue celebrity or stick to her craft. A lot of readers may relate to the difficulty. It was more than a love affair. It was about rediscovering your voice. She was taken seriously in the literary world. This was more than a famous person penning a book to get attention. Read, Taylor Jenkins. It was highly praised by the author of Daisy Jones and the Six. If you enjoyed that book, you'll enjoy this one as well, she said. Tom Hanks even made a remark. Claimed that Hoffs did a fantastic job of capturing love, music, and heartbreak. Her witty banter and the character's sense of realism won praise from critics. They felt she had genuine talent and likened her to more seasoned writers. For a first-time novelist, much alone a musician, that level of recognition is uncommon. From 2021 to 2025, Hoffs's creativity was at its peak. In a short period of time, she put out 3 albums. The release date of Bright Lights was November 12, 2021. Among the 10 cover songs was a duet with Amy Mann. In the UK, it even peaked at number 83 on the chart. She then published The Deep End in April 2023. It was audacious. Under my thumb, she even changed the Rolling Stones' meaning, giving the woman more authority. The Lost Record was published by her in October 2024. She recorded these songs in 1999 while taking care of her infant. The Go-Go's Jane Wiedland and Charlotte Caffey provided assistance. That record had the feel of a musical journal about home and love. She gave a performance at Carnegie Hall on March 26, 2025. The concert commemorated 50 years since Smith's well-known album Horses and paid homage to Patti Smith. Legends filled the stage. Flea was a bassist. On drums was Steve Jordan. Charlie Sexton was a guitarist. On keyboards was Ben Montench. Smith created a heartfelt song for her sister, Kimberly, which Hoffs sang. She later thanked Patti for including her and that the entire evening was full of love. It was evidence that she was still one of the greatest. Hoffs, who was 66 at the time, went viral for her looks rather than her music or writings. Her youthful appearance astounded her admirers. She shared a video of herself smiling and having coffee on Instagram without makeup. "This is 65, she wrote as the caption. The comments were inundated with people. She appeared to be 30 years old, according to some. She was referred to be beautiful by others. She didn't act as though she wasn't getting older. She spoke it candidly, stating that it's okay because time passes. For fun, she occasionally even sports her old bangle ensembles and teases her hairstyle from the 1980s. She was an inspiration to women everywhere because of her pleasure and honesty.